Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS Inform. I'm your host, Bill Potter. Joining us in the studio, as he does on Fridays during legislation, that is State Senator Mark Messmer, representing District 48. Senator, welcome to the show.
Great to be here as always.
I want to congratulate you on receiving the National Federation of Independent Businesses Guardian of Small Business Award.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've been at the State House when they've awarded that to one year. Congressman Jackie Worlorski got that award a couple years ago. So when they called me a couple weeks ago and said, "We will, can you be at our Small Business Day? We've got an award for you," I felt pretty honored about that.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for the representation of this district in that way as well.
Absolutely, glad to.
Now we're going to catch up on some bills that have gone through this week, or kind of what's happening in legislation on the Senate side.
Okay, so on the Senate side, I had 3 bills that I'm sponsoring that were in committee this week. 2 of them passed out. One of them will get voted on next week. But House Bill 1470, it's a bill that deals with transmission and distribution lines for utility companies. And 6 years ago, we passed a law that currently utility companies, they have what are called trackers. And about 75% of the tracker costs deal with cost of fuel, whether it's natural gas or coal. And as that cost of the fuel varies, they've got trackers that they don't go back in for new rate cases, probably every 5 to 10 years, where they go to the IURC, the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, to get a new utility rate, hearing set. So in between those big, hearing processes every 5 to 10 years, they have allowed in statute, cost adjustment factors for, primarily cost of fuel. But along with that, in 2013, most of the utility companies, a lot of their big infrastructure was put in, post-World War II. A lot of it's 50 years old, and big transmission lines, transformers, substations. A lot of that stuff's hitting its 50-year life cycle, and so they needed to start planning for upgrades and replacements of a lot of their infrastructure. And you would think, and we thought, as we put that bill together, part of that, it dealt with other utility issues, but what they call the transmission, distribution, safety, infrastructure, basically, they call it TDSIC, was the acronym for all of those things that are basically their distribution system for gas companies or power companies. And the way the bill was set up back then, the utility companies, when they had a map of what they were going to do for, upgrades or maintenance of those and replacement of those systems, they did it over a 7-year period, and after that 7-year period, then they have to go back in for a full, rate hearing. And we thought we had structured, the bill correctly, but a couple years ago or last year, the Supreme Court decided we had said that they would, in that 7-year period, they would designate, their plan of what they were going to work on, whether it was pole replacement, wire replacement. They decided designated meant that they actually had to identify, in their entire utility network, every single individual pole that was going to be replaced. Now, next year, 2 years, 3 years, up to 7 years later. Well, you don't always know exactly. Do you know when you're going to need to rotate your tires or change? Do you know when your roof's going to need to be, replaced in your house? How can you, with that specificity or that specific of a level, 7 years in advance, how do you know exactly what you're going to have to do? They were, that 7-year plan had to have a specific, maximum, it could only be 2% of their total, spending, for the, each of those periods of years. We thought we had it set up to be workable, but then the court said designated means, to the cross the T, dotted I, and nothing could change from that over 7 years. Well, that's just not practical. So that House Bill 1470 that passed out of the House, I think like 85 to 11 or something. It was a very bipartisan bill, has bipartisan authors, and we'll have bipartisan sponsors. So it's not a political issue at all, but it just comes down to being a functional, usable tool, to be able to replace and upgrade and, deal with new technologies that come on that allow them to operate more efficiently. So we had that hearing on Thursday. It was a long hearing. A lot of people that came in with their opinions, either for or against, and they decided. He said, we're going to hear the bill. It's going to take a long time. We want to wait and listen to the discussion and see if there's anything we need to, amendments that we need to do. So, sometimes you schedule a bill, you just call it, hearing only, and then sometimes it's just amending and voting. So this is one he said, we're just going to hear it. We're not going to vote it Thursday. But at the culmination of the hearing, listen to all the reasons why or why not to do it. The chairman and actually the author of the bill, 6 years ago is now, when he was in the House, is now in the Senate. They listened to the discussions, and we all agreed afterward, there was really no compelling reason to draft any amendments on it. So next week we'll vote the bill out. But a pretty critical bill, and people say, why do you guys have to make so many laws?
Cleaning it up.
Well, because every year, this year I think so far I've been involved with at least 5 or 6 bills that deal with, courts that interpreted something differently than what we thought. We thought it was pretty clear. In their mind, it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And so a good chunk of what we do every year, and by the time this session's done, it'll probably be, 10 bills that I'm aware of, that they're just dealing with court rulings and, them interpreting what we thought designated. You wouldn't have thought. That's just designating what you're going to do. So we changed designated to described.
But a big difference to the court.
Big difference to the court.
Right.
So, and then I had a couple other bills, one that I worked with Representative Lindauer on, dealing with, on filing property tax paperwork with the assessor's office in Pike County. I guess it wasn't any of the large, oil well driller, folks out there. The Farm Bureau co-ops have a big, oil well systems all around southern Indiana. Somebody in Pike County was giving their assessor, a lot of heartburn about not filing his assessments on time, or and if they don't get them turned in on time, then the assessor's office has to recalculate, their property tax assessment process. So it was a bill that set up some fines for being late, and then another higher level of fines if you're not only you miss the filing deadline, but you miss 30 days past that, just to kind of but there was nothing in statute that gave the assessor any teeth in enforcing those assessing paperwork deadlines. So glad to work with Representative Lindauer on that one. That one passed out of committee unanimously. It'll hit the floor for amending probably Tuesday, and then next Thursday should be up for final passage. So glad to see that one moving. House Bill 1060, worked with Representative Bartels on that one. He's got part of Du Bois County as well. Mm-hmm. And Heritage Hills, North Spencer Schools, they had a TIF area that they let expire that was around the AK Steel site a couple years ago. And when that TIF zone went out of existence, they're supposed to reset the property values, and assessment values. And on part of North Spencer's, capital funds portion of that, for some reason, the assessor would not make the adjustment to their, to their tax base rates, and I think it was costing the school about $650,000 a year in lost assessments that they should have been getting, and the DLGF, the Department of Local Government Finance, they couldn't. That happened in a couple of other counties across the state, and on those other counties, the assessor said, "We'll just reset the value, and go ahead," and didn't cost, the taxing units, any lost revenue. The assessor in Spencer County just said, "I'm not going to do it." So we can fix that legislatively. So we pass, usually every year there's somebody across the state that has, an assessment revaluation that they have to do statutorily. DLGF says, we're happy to do it if you tell us to do it. But if the local assessor won't do it, we're kind of stuck. So that bill passed out of committee unanimously. We should get final passage on it, and that'll help North Spencer schools quite a bit.
Good.
Two bills of mine that came out of committee this week in the House, Senate Bill 551, my Victims of Crimes Act, passed out of Courts and Criminal Codes in the House 11-1, and it's off to the floor for final passage next week. Senate Bill 459, doing the Defense Task Force, to help Indiana be more proactive in seeking defense contracts, out of committee this week unanimously. And then I had my first bill of the session go through the House and the Senate, Senate Bill 231, which clarifies that direct sales companies, direct sales people are not employees, they're independent contractors. Passed unanimously in the House this week and is off to the governor for signature.
And when will the governor sign it?
Usually they have, I think, like 7 to 10 days from when they get it. So soon, yep.
Well, that's exciting. Well, thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Our guest again has been State Senator Mark Messmer, representing District 48, the Guardian of the Year. That makes you now a Marvel Avenger.
You bet.
Thank you for watching WJTS Inform. We are local people watching local people.